Hi everyone, I wanted to put this video up. This was done with my mentor Lyndsay Loveridge. It was done back in 2018. Yes, I know my hair's different. It's white now and back then it was all curly. But I wanted to share this with you because I think a lot of you will really enjoy it. This is up on my members wall and many of you may have seen it already. But for those of you that haven't, this is a little bit of my story. Hi everyone. Well, you know what? Over the years, I've often spoken about my mentor and the lady who trained me. Well, you know what? I am blessed today because she's sitting right beside me. This is Lyndsay Loveridge. Now, she's been quoted in many magazines around the world for being instrumental in my success, which I still believe to this very, very day, Lyndsay. You have been so instrumental in my success. But before I get Lyndsay to have a little chat, here's a few numbers for you. She started hairdressing in 1964 and she finished her connections with the industry in 2018. That's 54 years of hairdressing. Lyndsay, welcome. Welcome to you, to everybody that follows me, welcome.
Thank you, Patrick.
So tell us about the industry and how much you've seen it change over the years.
I think it's a bit like horse to cart, isn't it? And to automobile, etc. So when I first started hairdressing, it was all about setting hair. And from there we moved on, and then it became about blow waving and cutting, and then it became precision cutting. From there it became precision colouring.
So really, I mean, having hairdressed for so many years,
Yeah.
How many people do you think over the years, now this is a surprise question, do you think you've trained?
I know that in terms of apprenticeships, it's in excess of 125 to completion, with very few not being completed. So apart from that, we've had, as you remember, numbers of salons and large numbers of salons. So in terms of people that I've worked with and touched, insurmountable.
It is incredible. I mean, that's a huge number of hairdressers that have gone on to be successful hairdressers, working in their own businesses, not only here where I'm from in New Zealand, but also worldwide.
Yes.
You know, you've got a huge stable of hairdressers. Lyndsay, as someone so experienced and someone who's been so involved in education, what's your advice to a lot of young hairdressers about entering our industry?
You've got to want to. I guess that's the very first thing. And you've got to be prepared to do the training and the whole 9 yards. There's good times, there's bad times, there's times when you want to give up, but you mustn't give up because the prize is worth having.
I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry now, isn't it?
It is.
So the changes you've seen. So at the very beginning, when setting was such a big thing,
Yes.
I mean, your salon days were crazy, weren't they?
They absolutely were, because we had what we call the weekly regular. And so we had clients every 15 minutes, and we fitted the comb-ups in between those 15 minutes. And I tell you what, this guy, he was the king of it. He could do it.
Oh no, I think you're the queen of the comb-ups myself. Lyndsay, what's funny, and I'm sure many of our viewers here would love to know, I hate to ask this, but what was your first impression of me?
When I got past the big hair, all the hair that the boy had, he was memorable. He really was. He was so full of vigour and full of life, and he had lots of talents. And I'd watched him actually from his very early days when he worked in a music store, to moving on from there and going to the Farmers, where he became a display artist. That was a very big time in those days. I watched him on stage when he was acting, and I watched him move amongst people, and I watched his social life as well. And I thought, this is a guy I want to have something to do with.
So I remember coming to the salon,
Yes.
and I asked a friend of mine, was there any courses that I could do on long hair, funnily enough, that I could do of an evening where I could learn how to do a little bit of hair, because I was involved in theatre and also window dressing, so my mannequins needed their hair doing. And she told you, didn't she, that I was interested?
She did. Yes, she did.
Yeah.
And I said, get back on the phone to that guy and get him to come in.
And which I did, and I went back literally the next day,
Yes.
And at the end of our talk, you offered me an apprenticeship.
I did.
But you also gave me 1,000 hours, didn't you?
I did because of your work-related or skill-related trade and work ethic, etc. And so, because on those days I was actually on the apprenticeship committee, I was able to be in the right place at the right time to prove that you had done the work. And also, you were a young adult.
I was. And back then, Lyndsay, what was the standard time for an apprenticeship? It was
4 years.
It was 4, so 8,000, was it 8,000
8,000
hours?
hours it was.
8,000 hours you had to train for your hairdressing apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough, as you say, to have got accredited 1,000 hours, which meant that my apprenticeship was slightly shorter, and it meant also my earning capacity as an adult remained relevant, really, for me to be able to work and live.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah.
And so, tell me because I love it. I haven't asked her, but tell me perhaps a couple of stories that you remember about me in the salon way back then.
Right, the stories that I remember. I think that first of all, Patrick loved people. If he touched them on the shoulder, he'd do this to his clients. They loved and adored him. Whether he could do hair or not, they wanted only Patrick. So I'll never forget that about him. Also, the staff loved him. He was fun, absolute fun. He was never still. He was pretty crazy. And he would do things to the staff's hair that I wasn't too keen on those days. And we used to call it jaking it up to Lyndsays. And he would
which meant getting the hair as big as I could possibly get.
Absolutely. And even in those days, that's something he could do.
And I remember you telling me off. She said to me one day, she said, Susan, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I did her hair. It's so huge you could hardly get through the door. And I think you decided it was time to call a stop to all of that, didn't you?
I did. I said, you've got to be able to fit it in a car. You couldn't even do that.
I couldn't even. And guys, you've got to remember, this was the 80s. So we're talking new wave romantic boy George Duran. We're talking about, the whole sort of romance of fashion and hair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And these were amazing times in New Plymouth, in New Zealand. And Lyndsay, when I left your employment, when I left New Zealand, did you think it was the right transition for me to go from our small city to London?
It was absolutely the only transition you should have made. And I was right behind you every inch of the way with that. I think that one thing that I remember is you paid your dues, so to speak, that you saw your apprenticeship through. You were a very valuable employee during that period of time, and it was time now for you to take your passport to the world and do what you did best.
I think over the years, every time I come back to New Zealand, it's been many times, we have always touched base, haven't we? Lyndsay, to all of you out there, is still to this very day my mentor. So I'm able to talk to Lyndsay as honestly and as fluidly as I want because you have followed me through all these years, haven't you?
Yes, I have, very much so. Yeah, I know you almost as well as you know yourself in some aspects. Yeah.
And I think it's also, you've seen me reinvent and work the craft to the level I've got it today.
Absolutely. You're a moving target. I never know what you're going to do next, and I always know there's something more to give, and I watch with interest.
So Lyndsay, this is the $60 million question. How do you see Patrick Cameron evolving?
Patrick, you're memorable, you're an influencer, you have got a story to tell, and people listen. They admire your craft, but they admire you as a person, and you actually touch everybody that you talk to, whether the audience is thousands or whether it's just a few people. And I think you've got a strong message. I'm really waiting to hear what you're going to do.
Oh, Lyndsay, thank you. It's always so important for me to get that feedback from you and just to feel you've got my back.
Always.
Yeah?
Always.
So, this is the first time many of you have met this amazing lady. This is Lyndsay Loveridge from New Zealand who trained me all those years ago. So Lyndsay, let's wait and see what happens and where the future takes me. But wherever the future takes me, my darling, you're coming with me.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. That was done back in 2018. Well, Patrick, you look quite young, but I think I like my hair grey. Grey is the way. Thank you, Lyndsay. I love you to the moon and back.